Welcome to the Psych Gym. I'm your trainer, Vanessa Perry, a former mental health therapist turned intuitive counselor. Much like a physical gym, in this space we'll aim to target specific psychological muscles and train them to be stronger. I'm so glad you are joining this gym. Let's hit the weights. Hey y'all, welcome back to the Psych Gym. Fear is what we're going to talk about today. Fear. We love that word, right? We talk about fear. We talk about fearless. We talk about do it scared. We talk about fear a lot, right? Fear drives so much of everything. But today we're just going to talk about that whole do it scared phenomenon. I want to talk about I want to give you permission to be afraid. And I want you to have permission to pause instead of jumping like a lot of people will tell you to do. Because, like everything, I feel like a lot of our internet psychology has really taken things and run with them without all the information. And this is one of them. That's right. So, what ends up happening is I see a lot of people, I mean, even in my counseling space, where they're like, yeah, I got to be brave. I got to be brave, right? I'm just going to do it, and I'm like, or let's just pause for a minute. Let's talk about our fear a little bit because you may still be doing it scared. But we have to be safe in the event that this doesn't go well, and we need to be safe, when it does go well. And we can't do that if we don't know what we're afraid of. That's making us have this fear, right? Because fear, my clients know this probably by heart. And if they don't, I hope they do. Anxiety comes from fear, and fear comes from a lack of trust, right? Because if you trust what is going to happen is going to be good, right? You won't have fear, you'll have anticipation, and you won't have anxiety, you'll have excitement, right? Very close cousins. It's all about what we anticipate is on the other side, what we're going to experience, right? If we think it's going to be negative or we're not really sure, but we're really afraid of the negative, that's where that fear is going to come in, right? Whereas if somebody told us that this is going to be an amazing experience and we've never done it before, we're not really doing it afraid as much as we're doing it with curiosity and we're doing it with excitement. And we're like, oh my God, I want to experience it too. So we have to break down what fear is in order to, I believe, safely do it scared. Like I said, you still might be scared. You still might be like, this is risky. I don't really know. I think I know what's on the other side, but I'm not really sure. But if we take our time and look into what we're afraid of in that scenario, you'd be surprised, y'all, how many times people come up against the question of, am I really afraid of that? It's almost like, well, it's not almost like, it is like, once you expose the entire thing, you find that there's not that much to be afraid of. Because, again, fear comes from lack of trust. If I mostly trust myself, or if I mostly trust my network or my support system, or I mostly trust my brain, or whatever it is that is at the most risk for the thing that we're trying to do, if I mostly trust that I'm going to be okay, my fear might lessen, or usually does lessen, right? Like I may still be a little bit like, okay, like this doesn't feel super comfy, but I have less of the whole impending, I don't really know what's going to happen. I don't know what I'm going to do if it doesn't happen the way I expect it to or want it to. We're going to have less of that. So I challenge you to allow yourself to sit with your fear instead of always trying to push through it. I definitely believe that creates more problems than it solves, because think of it this way. If you have decided that you want to do something or be something or start something and you've never done it before and you just only start, you can fumble your way through a lot of stuff. But if something happens that is extra unmanageable for you, you're already on like pretty shaky ground. That's why a lot of people quit. after a while, right? Like if you, whatever it is, because they didn't really have a decent foundation underneath them, sometimes of knowing why they're doing the thing that they're doing, knowing themselves, right? Like, and what they need to succeed in that space. If we just do things on a whim without thinking about it, we create more problems for ourselves most of the time. If you actually think about it in your own life, I bet you're going to come up with that solution. So I'm giving you permission to not do anything if you're afraid. I'm giving you permission to stop and think and work through your fear before you take action. I don't want you to stay there though. And that's where I think a lot of people get stuck, is because they'll say, Vanessa, you told me. You told me I could sit in my fear. You told me I didn't have to do anything. And now I'm not doing anything. Like, I'm not doing anything at all. Right? Like, so how do I get myself to do something? And this is where, it's a hell of a lot easier to do this with a person. Like, it's so much easier to sit with me because I know what questions to ask, but I can teach people what questions to ask. Like, what do you anticipate is going to happen here? Who are the people that, whose input it is that you're anticipating is going to blah, blah, blah. You're just going to ask all those questions. People who have never had like severe anxiety, I think, have difficulty with the understanding that this actually helps, because it feels like, oh no, like you can't go in the anxiety spiral, you'll stay there. Like, not if you keep following it. A lot of times we follow it and we get to a solution and then we're done. But if we stop halfway and try to fight ourselves by going, just do it, just do it, just do it, so much more anxiety happens, and it takes a lot longer to get to eventually what the bottom of the spiral is going to be anyway, which is, oh, I can do it, right? Or, oh, it wasn't that bad. Or, oh, if I had only A, B, and C, I would have enjoyed this journey a hell of a lot more than I did because I was stressed out the whole time. So it's so important to look into our fear, because we'll grow. We'll grow. All of those things will likely eradicate so much of that fear. And I'm trying to come up with an example, Vanessa. Come up with an example. Starting a business. I'll just give that one because I think that one's one that I dealt with personally, and other people deal with, or don't deal with because they're afraid to do it. So when I was going out on my own, I had my reason for doing it. My reason for doing it being, I want to be home with my daughter. I want to be present in her life. I do not want to be gone and pay somebody else to raise her, especially in her young years. I want to be here. When she gets a little bit older, we'll deal with it. But for now, that's what I want to do. And I want freedom. I want to be able to be anywhere. So those were my reasons. But I was terrified, right? I was afraid of everything because I didn't know what it took to run a business. I had been looking at all the businesses I worked in as examples and was like, oh my God, I don't want to do that. So what is it? Like, how am I going to succeed in this place? And I could have just started. And I did just start. And I went running right back to signing contracts and all that kind of stuff because I was so scared. The few clients that I had, I was so scared of what was going to happen to me with the licensing board, what was going to happen over here. What do I do about growth? What do I do about personal development? What do I do about business development? I didn't know anything. What do I do about taxes? What do I do about blah, 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 And it was like super overwhelming. How do I advertise? How do I get more clients? Right? All of that kind of stuff, right? Now, because I didn't have anybody at that time to kind of sit with me and talk to me about the anxieties that go underneath all of that, each one has their own different fear, I started to do it scared. And like I said, I went running back, signed some contracts, one of them, which I really just didn't want, but I was so afraid. And I took it, and it was miserable. I was miserable in one of them, not in both of them. And then the pandemic hit, and I had to strengthen my business more. The contracts weren't going to cut it anymore. I was going to have to do it on my own. And so I took the time. Now, granted, I had the contracts going. Um, the ver- they were going at the time. So when I was ready to quit one of them, that I was working with kids, I didn't want to work with kids. Um, I remember sitting and being like, okay, what are you afraid of? Right? And asking myself, so you're afraid that you're not going to have, enough clients. Okay, we'll start getting clients now, again, and see what happens. And just keep one of these contracts open so that you still have some money coming in while you're busy building the business, right? That was my first thought. I was like, oh, okay, that might be safe. But eventually what I had to do was go all the way back in to say, if you have all these other options. Your only option isn't try and succeed or try and fail. Eh, You have options. If you decided that you wanted to, or if all of the things happened and you had no roof over your head, somebody would put a roof over your head, right? So we don't have to stress about that. You could always get a job. You can always get a job. You have a master's degree and you've worked in all kinds of different areas. As a matter of fact, if you got a finance job, you get paid more. You get paid more money. Like you could go right back into finance. But it was like, I don't want to. I don't want to do that. So what am I going to do? I'm going to make this work. And so I'm going to get information that makes me feel safe. I'm going to talk to people who have done this. I'm going to talk to people who are in my field. I'm going to go get the information that quells my fears, right? I'm going to go figure that out. And then in the meantime, I'm going to do my own self-development to be like, hey, how come you don't believe in yourself? How come you literally don't believe after everything you've done in your life, not knowing what you're doing a high percentage of the time? Why right now do you think that you are not going to be good at the thing that you are already good at? Why do you think that nobody's going to come see you, even though people are already coming to see you and enjoying their experience? Where is this coming from? So I had to sit with my fear in order to eventually just get out of all the contracts and really, really be on my own. And y'all, it was the best thing that I could have ever done because now here I am and I love it. And I feel so much more confident in taking other steps because now I have that experience behind me of saying it's okay to be scared. It's okay to not do something right away because I'm scared, because I've got to ask it a lot of questions about why it's scared. I have to ask myself a lot of questions about my belief systems and how they're operating or not operating right now. And then I'll still have a little bit of fear. I'll still have a little bit of trepidation, but I probably won't self-sabotage because I also have confidence. Even if it's a tiny bit, I have some confidence. I have confidence in me being able to figure it out. And that is enough in more spaces than you could understand. Truly. If you actually believe that you're a resilient person, there's a lot that I'll do because I'm like, well, if I fall on my face, I'll do something else. And it's just that simple. So I hope that this was helpful. I hope that you feel like you have been given permission to be a little afraid and to not jump right away, but also to not sit in your fear forever, because it's easy to do that. I highly encourage you to do this work with somebody else because if you do it by yourself, you get a lot of times stuck in your own spiral in your own head, because if you knew how to ask the right questions, you wouldn't do that, right? When you know how to ask the right questions to your fear, you will move through that. But if you don't know the right questions, you're just going to make yourself crazy. So I'm not saying this because I'm like, oh my God, hire me. Like, as a matter of fact, I think my schedule's full right now. I'm saying it like, because I see it every day, that it is so much easier when when I ask somebody a question and they answer it versus when they're in their head, because that self-sabotage monster takes over the they ask a question of themselves, and then they just go into this whole negative part of like, yeah, but then this is going to happen and then this is going to happen, and I have to be there to interrupt, to go, or what other things could happen, because that could happen, but because of you and your strengths, what else could happen? How could you interfere with that process and change it? right? So I'm interrupting their process to introduce new things. That's what we have to be able to do to our self sabotager. So, yeah, probably do it with somebody else if you can. But I hope that it gives you just a little bit of an idea and a little bit of like, just shake off that whole, you know, do it scared or else you're, I don't know, not good enough or whatever that message feels like. I don't like how it feels. I don't like how it feels as a blanket statement. I don't like blanket statements. So, yeah. You can do it scared if you want to. You can do whatever you want, truly. If you know why you're doing it and you have your intention, who am I to judge? Right? I'm not here to judge. I'm here to help. So you can do it scared if that's what you feel like you need to do because you're just like, man, I'm a doer and I'm a bump up against the wall person. I'm just going to do that. Go ahead. But for those of you who are just not those people, you're just not that person. You're not at that level of bravery, but you know that there's something out there more for you. Think about this concept and work it so that you can take your baby steps toward the life that you love. Love y'all.